Well, welcome back to 49er Forecast on a Saturday as we get you ready for the Niners and the Buffalo Bills. The Niners have to have this one, and Buffalo is playing great. And with us on the UMA guest line to help us break it down is Jay Skurski, who covers the Buffalo Bills for the Buffalo News. Jay, thanks for the time. Appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, appreciate you having me. No problem.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Josh Allen. Man, he looks like the MVP of the league. I'm reading he's on the verge of getting engaged, I guess, to Haley Steinfeld. I mean, this guy's world's exploding right now. He's going to be the second most famous person in his family eventually. Here, Allen's been terrific this year, hasn't he?
Yeah, he certainly has. Yeah, it's been a big week for him, as you mentioned there. He got engaged, and that is the talk of the town in Buffalo right now. Maybe even ahead of this week's game. But no, listen, on the field, he has been remarkable, and that's nothing new. He's been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL for years now. But the fact that he has, I think, refined his game in such a way where he's really taking care of the football. That was one of the knocks against him, fair or unfair. I think in some ways it was unfair, but he has cleaned that up largely. He's taken basically an entirely new cast of wide receivers, save for Khalil Shakir, and gotten production out of them. Their offense, while it, statistically has not maybe risen to the level that it has in years past, they're getting the job done, kind of week in, week out. You look at that play that he made 2 weeks ago in their last game against the Chiefs before the bye. It's 4th and 2. You need a play. You turn to your best, your best player. You keep the ball in his hands, and he turns in what was the highlight of the year for the Bills, one of the highlights of the year in the NFL. Runs it in for a touchdown to beat Kansas City and knock them from the ranks of the unbeaten. So, in terms of what the Bills ask from Josh Allen, it's a lot, right? They want him to be the face of the franchise. They want him to be the unquestioned leader of this offense and of this team, and he's delivering on all fronts this season so far.
How is this offense different, under Brady than it was under a guy like Ken Dorsey, let's say, a couple of years ago?
So they run it a little bit more. James Cook is effective. His numbers are down a little bit from where they were last year, but his touchdown total is way up. And so I think he's a really good lead running back, but he's not the only guy, right? Ray Davis is a rookie, Bay Area, actually. Grew up in San Francisco, and so this will be, I'm sure, fun for him to play against the 49ers. But he's run really hard as a rookie. Even Ty Johnson, their third running back, has given them some good play at times. And Allen as a runner is just so darn effective. And so they're balanced. And I think that's important because they've been, as I mentioned at the start, they're working in a lot of new wide receivers, and they've been dealing with a lot of injuries at wide receiver. And so the fact that they can beat you multiple ways on offense is sort of new for them. They can really they don't have to overly rely on Josh Allen. They can win games almost solely with their rushing attack now, and that in turn I think makes life easier for Josh Allen.
Yeah, I mean Dalton Kincaid is out. Any word on Keon Coleman or Spencer Brown? I know those guys were dinged up this week. Are they going to go?
Spencer Brown is back. He'll be in there. Keon Coleman is he's questionable, and I think it's very questionable. He was in a red non-contact jersey all week at practice. So we'll see. What was a good sign that he was catching some passes from Allen. But I don't, I think with where the Bills are right now in the standings, with the AFC East all but assured that they're going to win, I wouldn't be surprised if they wanted to take it, slow or take it safe with Keon Coleman. You mentioned that Kincaid will be out. That certainly does impact the offense a little bit, but they're getting healthier. I think the bye came at a good time for them.
Since week 7, Khalil Shakir ranks 4th among wide receivers in receptions per game, 7.2. He's had at least 6 in every game he's played over that stretch. Now here come the Niners on the defensive side. They're allowing the 4th most yards per reception to the slot receiver. How good has Shakir been, and how much has Amari Cooper, in that addition, helped this receiving core?
Yeah, so Shakir first, he's been great. Very, very good. Basically, kind of everything that they've needed him to be. He was a player the second half of last season that really started to emerge, and I think has built on that really well. He did deal with an ankle injury kind of week 5. He missed the game, but I think that impacted him probably for a couple of weeks after that. I think that is really now behind him, and I think we're seeing the difference, what 100% or as close to it as you can get at this point, healthy Khalil Shakir can mean for this offense. Probably 2020, 2021 is the best that I've seen this offense play under Allen. And it was no surprise or no small part of that was Cole Beasley in the slot. He was dynamic for this team for 2 or 3 years. And Khalil Shakir has been pretty much every bit of what Cole Beasley was. And I mean that in a very complimentary way, because Cole Beasley was excellent for this offense. And when you have that type of a weapon in the slot, or a reliable sort of guy that you can trust in the slot, it means a lot for Allen. And I think, Khalil Shakir has really developed into that. The second part of your question with Amari Cooper, it's almost too early to say. And I know that sounds crazy. He's been on the team now for a while, but he gets hurt in the second game that he's with the Bills. It's a wrist injury. It keeps him out of a couple of games. He's able to come back against Kansas City, and he makes a couple of big plays, but only 2 catches. Then they have the bye week. And so, he's playing with a cast on his wrist. I mean, that tells you the toughness of the guy, right? But in terms of what he means overall for this offense and how it's going to function when he is 100% or close to it, we haven't really seen that yet. And I think that's actually one of the reasons why, if you're feeling even more excited, I guess, or optimistic about where this Bills team can go, well, when you have Keon Coleman, Amari Cooper, and Khalil Shakir all functioning healthy and being able to take their full complement of snaps with Dalton Kincaid, that's probably their best grouping on offense. And we really haven't seen that yet. So I think that's the goal over these final 6 weeks here. We know this team's making the playoffs. We know they're winning the AFC East. They're in the running for the number 1 seed, but they want to use this 6 weeks to really get healthy and sort of fine tune what that offense is going to look like when it gets into the postseason.
They've got a couple really good running backs. I mean, James Cook can run it. He can catch it. That's Dalvin Cook's younger brother. He's been good. He scored 15 or more fantasy points in 3 of the past 4 games, so he's pretty productive. You mentioned all day Ray Davis. If you watch Kentucky, football, he was great in college. And you're right, he's a San Francisco guy. Is there any rhyme or reason to how Brady utilizes his 2 backs?
Yeah, Cook is the lead back. There's only been maybe a game or 2 where that hasn't been the case. He did miss 1 game mid-season with an injury. I forget at this point what the injury even was, but he was able to get back pretty quickly. No, it's mostly Cook, and then beyond that, it's between Ty Johnson and Ray Davis. It's kind of game script, game flow, who maybe has a little bit of the hot hand. I think they view that 2-3 running back rotation as maybe more matchup based. Cook is going to be in there as the starter against pretty much anybody, but then Davis and Johnson have kind of rotated back and forth who that second running back is.
This offensive line, I was looking at some of the numbers. Josh Allen's been sacked the fewest number of times of any quarterback in football. Deion Dawkins is his left tackle. He's a tremendous talent. And they went Osiris Torrance early in the 23 draft. He's their right guard. I kind of like Brown, who's the kind of a tall right tackle. How would you describe this line? Is this the best line the Bills have had in a while?
Yes, and that I think has been a pleasant, I don't know if I would say surprise, but pleasant development. Mitch Morse was their veteran center, played some very good football, had a great relationship with Josh Allen. They let him go after this past season in kind of a salary cap related move. And there was some legitimate questions about how that line would sort of take shape without Morse. So Connor McGovern slid over from left guard to center. They inserted David Edwards into the lineup at left guard. He was their 6th offensive lineman last year. Actually ended up kind of playing a decent amount because the Bills do a jumbo package with 6 offensive linemen quite frequently, actually. And the line has not missed a beat. And honestly, I think it's a little bit better than maybe even it was last year. They've stayed very healthy. Brown has been the only one to miss a game. That was last week or 2 weeks ago against Kansas City with a sprained ankle, but he'll be back now. So they've been able to stay healthy. There's a lot of continuity up front. You mentioned Allen being sacked the least amount among starting quarterbacks in the league. Now, we have to give Allen a lot of credit there, too. He is exceptionally elusive. He is exceptionally good at making that first rusher miss. But there are some advanced stats that would say that this Bills line has probably been the best that they've had since Josh Allen has been the quarterback. And, you look at their their rushing numbers on the surface maybe don't say that they're, one of the better running attacks in the league. But if you dive deeper into the advanced stats, when they do want to run it, they're pretty successful. And again, I attribute that to some of the success that they're able to have up front too. So yeah, I think as a whole, this group, whether it be run blocking or pass blocking, is playing at a high level.
It's interesting. You look at the Niners offense compared to Buffalo's offense. 49ers offense is fourth overall, but they're 13th in scoring. So they're fourth in yards, 13th in points. The Bills offense is 13th in yards, but third overall in points. The Niners are not getting it done in the red zone. So is it safe to say the Bills have been excellent in the red zone?
They've been good in the red zone. They're getting better on third downs. Traditionally, I should say that they have been an amazing third down team. Led the league or finished top 2, top 3 in, I want to say 3 of the past 4 years or so. Very, very good third down team. At the beginning of the season, they were not. However, the last, I want to say 7 games or so, it's really improved to the point now where they're back into the top 10 in third down conversion rate. And so, if you extend drives, obviously that leads to more scoring opportunities. And when you get into the red zone with Josh Allen, given his dual threat nature, they're a tough team to defend when you get down close to the goal line. They've had some, contributions from Keon Coleman down in toward the goal line. Dawson Knox, their number 2 tight end, who's going to be their starter with Kincaid out, has always been a pretty good goal line threat. And so, yeah, they have found a way to finish drives, even though, their yards per game maybe doesn't, paint the entire picture for the success that they've had offensively.
I know the Niner game plan, no matter who's at quarterback, is going to be run the ball an awful lot. Matt Milano, I know he's got the torn left biceps. I haven't heard whether or not he's going to go. Is there any word on Milano?
Just that he has been able to practice fully all week. He still is on injured reserve. I think that one's truly kind of up in the air. We should get word here pretty soon. Obviously they'll have to activate him. He is still on injured reserve, so they would have to activate him. I do believe that they have an open roster spot to do that. It would be, I would say, maybe a week or 2 sooner than what we expected in terms of Milano's return to the lineup. But we know that he's a very diligent worker. We know he's been, grinding on his rehab since he got hurt in August. We've seen him in the facility basically daily. So he's been around the team. There's not, there's no worry at all about him in terms of getting up to speed with the scheme. I think it's just a matter of, do they want to bring him in this week, or do they want to hold off just to be extra cautious with him maybe one additional week because it is an NFC opponent? I think that remains to be seen, but Milano is getting very close to a return.
We're talking to Jay Skurski on the Uma guest line. Jay covers the Buffalo Bills for the Buffalo News. Niners and Bills go tomorrow night in Buffalo. There could be 30-mile-an-hour winds and wind chill temperatures in the single digits. What do you think? Is this, you're there, boots on the ground. I mean, what's it looking like? You think it could be 30-mile-an-hour winds and snow everywhere? Is this going to be one of those games where it's impossible to run? And might that favor the 49ers? I know that sounds crazy that would favor the West Coast team, but Buffalo's defense has given up 4.9 per carry. That's third worst in the league. Baltimore ran it on them early in the year for big numbers. I don't know that the Niners can do that. But what do you think? What's the weather going to look like in this game?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm looking at green grass at my house, but I live in Amherst, which is the north towns of Buffalo, and the south towns is traditionally, and that's where Orchard Park is, and that's where they get hit with the snow pretty hard. And so, yeah, I expect that this is going to have some, whether the snow is falling during the game or not, there's going to be snow on the ground. There is going to be a wind factor. It seems seemingly always a wind factor in Highmark Stadium. It's a very windy stadium. Kind of where the playing field sits is actually below ground level, and the wind just kind of comes in there. And even on days where you feel like the wind wouldn't be much of a factor, it seemingly always is. So yeah, I think that the potential is very high for the weather to impact this game. You mentioned the Bills' run defense. It's probably their biggest deficiency right now in terms of yards per carry allowed against, as you mentioned, they're third worst in the league, 30th in the NFL right now. It's absolutely a concern. I mean, you look at the running backs that they have coming up on the schedule, starting obviously with Christian McCaffrey. If I'm an opposing offensive coordinator, I'm saying, all right, I want to control the flow of the game by running the football. It keeps Josh Allen off the field, which is great. And I need to, I have to make the Bills prove that they can stop the run, and they have not been able to do that at times. So I do expect, weather conditions being the way that they are will play into that. But honestly, even if it was 50 and there was no wind and the weather conditions were ideal, I'd still want to run it if I were the 49ers.
It's funny. You look at the Niners; they have got a weapon in Christian McCaffrey who they can throw it to, but then no team in the league has allowed a lower percentage of targets to opposing running backs than Buffalo. They 25%. They're really good at defending the running back out of the backfield. It's interesting. I brought up the run D, but if you look at the way they just defended Kansas City's run, you'd say, hey, man, Buffalo's really good against the run. But if you looked at them early in the year against Baltimore ran right through them. Have there been changes to their personnel or to their scheme? Why were they so deficient against the run early in the year?
Yeah, no changes. No changes to the scheme. No changes to the personnel, really. I'm trying to remember back to that Baltimore game in Week 4, whether they were missing anyone. Terrell Bernard, their middle linebacker, I believe, missed that game. That's certainly impactful. He has developed into quite a playmaker for them. But that doesn't, excuse it. That was just one of those games where they got Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson on the other side, and those guys are really good, and they proved it. But no, the Bills' run defense it's run a little bit hot and cold here over the past few weeks. They were excellent against Seattle. That was Week 8. Kansas City, as you mentioned, Week 11, that would have been. They were pretty good. Jonathan Taylor had a lot of success in Week 10. He's a player that's given them problems in the past. Miami ran for a lot of yards. That was by design. They don't care if Miami runs for a lot of yards. They don't want Tyreek Hill scoring 80-yard touchdowns against them. So that was a scheme kind of thing. So, yeah, I think that this Bills run defense, their defensive tackles, Daquan Jones, Ed Oliver, I'd like to see a bit more impactful play from them this season. I feel like they've been okay. But I don't know that they've really taken over any games, especially with Oliver. You'd like to see a little bit more of that. But by and large, I think the Bills have a defensive philosophy where if the other team is focused on the run, most of the time the Bills are going to be okay with that because they aren't giving up the quick score that way. And, you look at their the way that they defend the deep ball and deep passes and sort of high, explosive plays. They're really good at taking those away from opposing offenses.
The 49ers are going to be without Trent Williams in this game. Jalen Moore is going to start at left tackle, Colton McKivitz at right tackle. Let's talk a little bit about the edge pieces on this defense. First of all, I don't know a lot about Buffalo's defensive coordinator. Is it Bobby Babich?
It is, yeah. Here, yes.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about Bobby Babich. And I know these edge rushers. I mean, Von Miller is a future Hall of Famer. I don't know how much he's got left, but, you never want to see any tackle one-on-one with Von Miller. And then Russo is, I loved him at Miami. I mean, he's 6'6", he's 265. He's their sack leader with 5.5. Talk to us a little bit about Miller and Russo off the edge. How effective have they been?
Yeah, Russo, I think, is one of the more underrated players in the NFL. I think he's been excellent. You look at, I know his sack number 5.5 maybe doesn't jump off the page, but go take a look at his tackles for loss. Go take a look at his quarterback hits. They're both up there in the league. I want to say top 5. For a while, he was leading the league in tackles for loss. I believe both of those numbers. The bye week maybe changed those a little bit, but I want to say they're close to top 5 in both of those stats. And those to me are a true reflection of what kind of impact you're making off the edge. You're getting close to the quarterback, you impacting him. Greg Rousseau is doing that a lot on top of being a very good run defender for an edge player. So I think Rousseau's having an excellent year. That's reflected in how much the Bills are playing him. Sean McDermott rotates along the defensive line quite a bit. Rousseau has earned his trust to the point where he's in there, I want to say 70+% of the snaps. That's a very high number for an edge rusher. Now it's the opposite for Von Miller. He's down around 30%, maybe 35%. With Von Miller, a game on December 1st is, fine. They want Von Miller to make an impact in January. They are basically keeping this guy fresh. They're hoping that he can be the closer, right? When they go against Patrick Mahomes or they go against Lamar Jackson deep into January and they need a play on a key third down, can Von Miller make it? So, we'll see Von Miller on Sunday night. He'll do some things, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if his snap count is, somewhere between 20, 25. If he played 30 plays, I'd be blown away because that's a big number. They believe in AJ Epinesa, opposite of Greg Rousseau. So they're deep on the defensive line, just in sheer numbers in terms of waves of guys at the edge position that they'll put out there. They're kind of keeping Von Miller, in my mind, under wraps until the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, it's a luxury to be able to do it, but he's like one of the few guys in football that I would actually do that for. The Niners have a guy like that who was in Buffalo last year, and Leonard Floyd, who, even without Nick Bosa last week, Floyd stepped up. He had 2 big sacks. That up the move, that up the field move where he just pushes up the field and then just kind of reads if the quarterback steps up in the pocket. And then if he does, he kind of jump cuts over and makes the sack. I mean, he's a very smart football player, Floyd, and he never loses sight of the football. But those veteran guys off the edge are so valuable. We mentioned how Buffalo's playing so well. I mean, they've won 6 straight. I mean, they've played really well. They've scored 30 or more in 5 straight. And they've done it. They've scored 30 or more 8 times this year, which is best in the league. I wanted to ask you a little bit about Allen, though, because he didn't throw an interception in the first 7 games of the year, but he's got 5 picks in the last 4 games. I'm looking at his record. He's 43-27 overall when he commits a turnover. Has there been any why has Allen had a flurry of turnovers in your opinion?
Well, so he's thrown 5. You said I can count at least 2 of those as being not on him at all. Bounced
really?
off. Yeah, at least 2. Bounced right off a guy's hands. One, there was a miscommunication with Cooper. One, hit Keon Coleman, should have been a touchdown against Miami. And instead it bounces straight up in the air and it's an interception for Jalen Ramsey. So, let's take 2 of those off his record if you could, and he's thrown 3 all season, right? So that's not bad. He had a couple against Indy. I want to say he threw 2 in that game. Those weren't great, but I think if you would have said through 11 games and a 9-2 start that Josh Allen's only thrown 5 interceptions, you'd sign up for that any day. And so, yeah, I think maybe a little bit of, as I mentioned, Khalil Shakir is the only receiver they have on this roster who coming into this year had caught a pass from Josh Allen. So there's still some chemistry building going on with some of these guys. I'm sure that's a part of this. Once in a while, you're going to make a bad throw. When you throw it as often as Josh Allen has, that happens. So that's not to excuse him entirely, but I think when you look at how many Mahomes has thrown, for example, right, you'd take what Allen's thrown at 5 this year.
No question. And what a guy. I mean, I saw the video with the kids in the hospital. I mean, the kid, Josh Allen is a special guy for sure. He's probably going to win the MVP. And even if he turns it over, the Niner defense has forced only 1 turnover in the past 3 games. They're not really putting a lot of pressure on opposing quarterbacks. How big of a win would it be for Josh to beat? I know he's a Fireball, California guy, so he was a Niner fan growing up. How big is it for him to beat the 49ers, do you think?
I don't know that he puts a ton into that. I mean, he'd like it. It was interesting. I had a conversation with him earlier this year before they went to Indianapolis a few weeks ago. The amount of teams that he has not beaten in the league is pretty small. Indy was one of them. The only team he hasn't beaten in the regular season now is Philadelphia, and that game sticks with him because they had a chance last year. They went to overtime and lost to the Eagles. But He has beaten the 49ers once. I'm sure, yeah, growing up in that part of the country, that it does add a little bit of significance. He actually hasn't started a game in San Francisco because the game that he beat them was played in Arizona, if you remember that, during the COVID year. And that was maybe one of the best games I've ever seen Allen play. That was a remarkable performance. Kind of a weird situation with the game being moved to Arizona's home stadium, but that is the win that he owns over the 49ers in the regular season.
Before we let you go, tell us a little bit about the guys who run this team. I mean, Brandon Beane is a young general manager. Sean McDermott is a fantastic defensive coach. And yet at different times there's been some heat on him for sure. I think you got a great head coach and a terrific GM. How do you view the brain trust of the Bills?
Well, I think that McDermott has done potentially his best coaching job, and he's had a lot of success here. I mean, his winning percentage is better than Marv Levy's. And so, Marv Levy took this team to 4 straight Super Bowls in the early 90s. And McDermott is easily the best coach they've had since then. You're right in the sense that he has had some high-profile moments in the postseason that have not gone his way. Against Kansas City, they, the famous 13 seconds loss. They were outclassed against Cincinnati in the playoffs in a home game. So the question for McDermott is not, can you win in the regular season? He has answered that in a resounding way. The question is, can you get this team over the hump in the playoffs when it matters most? Can you deliver that long-awaited first Super Bowl? We don't know the answer to that. We won't know that until January at the soonest. But in terms of the job he's done this year with the turnover that they've had, a lot of it brought on by the salary cap situation they were in. They said goodbye to a lot of veterans, and they haven't missed a beat. They have been way better than I thought they were going to be. I'll be honest. And I think they've been better than I think most people thought they were going to be. I think a lot of people had this as a 10 or an 11 win team. Maybe they get to 12. Maybe the Dolphins, finally overtake them in the AFC East and they make it into the playoffs as a wild card. Well, they got a chance Sunday night to win the AFC East for the 5th straight time. That's never been done in franchise history. Mind you, this is a team that went to 4 straight Super Bowls in the early 90s. Even those teams never won 5 straight division titles. So that, I think, tells you the amount of success that they've had under Sean McDermott, under Brandon Beane. Beane, like any general manager, has had his hits and misses in personnel, but I think he's drafted really well in recent years. They're getting a lot of contributions from rookies or second-year guys. His free agent acquisitions, given the fact that they don't have a lot of money generally to spend in free agency, I think he's done okay in that regard. I wouldn't say it's been a particular strength necessarily, but it's been fine. But the biggest thing that Brandon Beane did was he hit on Josh Allen, right? And, now he's sort of tasked with building a team around Allen, and to both of their credits, they've gotten a team that I think a lot of people consider this to be a transition year. Well, it's not a transition year anymore. It is, you look at the AFC standings and it's hey, we got a chance to get to the Super Bowl type of a year for the Bills, and the GM and the head coach obviously deserve a lot of that credit.
I'll tell you one guy that I thought was a great under the radar move was when Buffalo picked up Brandon Codrington, I think from the Jets. And what a return guy he is. He ranks 4th in the NFL. He's got 243 punt return yards, and watch for him to go off in this game because the 49ers are ranked 32nd in the NFL. For those of you who are counting, that's last. They give up 16.4 yards per punt return. They've already given up a kickoff return for a touchdown, and Codrington's the real deal. That was a great get. I mean, a player that was ready to be an impact guy on special teams, and they grabbed him, I think, from the Jets, and that was, that was a sharp move by Beane for sure.
Yeah, that was a need. Clearly, they went through the preseason. They weren't satisfied with what they had at returner. And, yeah, it was one of those classic late-round pick swap moves so that the Bills could get him before he hit the waiver wire, because they were worried with where they were on the waiver wire list, priority list, that they weren't going to be able to get him. And you're right, he's solidified that job. He's taken it over. He's made some mistakes, as a rookie will. but he's also shown an ability to make some really big plays. And yeah, it's looked like he's been pretty close to breaking one. And yeah, with this game coming up and the potential for weather and the factor that might be in this game, if he were able to steal a touchdown in that regard on special teams, that could go a long way for the Bills.
Jay, if Niner fans, football fans out here on the West Coast want to follow you on social media, where's the best place to catch you?
Yeah, sure. Just probably on X is the best, and it's my name at Jay Skurski. That's JaySkurski.
Appreciate you stopping by on 49er Forecast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Enjoy it.
Jay Skurski stopping by. Niners and Bills go tomorrow night on The Sports Leader.